Captain Alina Weber's footsteps echoed through the cavernous underground hangar, each sound reverberating off walls that hadn't heard human activity in decades. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing the massive silhouette beneath layers of preservation polymers and dust. The ESV Prometheus. Standing 27 meters tall and 70 meters long, the vessel represented humanity's most ambitious pre-contact military project. Powers coming online, Captain called Dr. Miyazaki, her chief engineer, voice echoing from somewhere within the auxiliary control station. Ancient fluorescent lights flickered reluctantly to life, bathing the forgotten facility in a harsh clinical glow. Alina approached the ship's hull, running her gloved hand along the distinctive angular plating. Unlike the smooth, organic curves of Imperial vessels, the Prometheus was all hard edges and deliberate geometries, a testament to human engineering principles that had been mocked as primitive by their galactic overlords. They called it inelegant, she murmured to herself, wasteful and unsophisticated. The Imperium had arrived 50 years ago with their gravitically impelled ships and energy-based weapon systems that seemed to defy the very laws of physics. Earth's governments had capitulated within weeks, abandoning military development in exchange for promises of technological advancement and prosperity. The Prometheus project, already over budget and behind schedule, was officially scrapped, though a small cadre of military officials had secretly preserved it, suspecting that one day humanity might need options beyond imperial benevolence. Those officials had been right. Dr. Weber called a voice from behind her. Alina turned to see Colonel Richards, the former Swiss Army officer who had maintained this facility in secret for 20 years. The preservation systems worked better than we could have hoped. Initial diagnostics show minimal degradation of the core systems. Alina nodded, but her attention had shifted to the heart of the ship, visible through an open maintenance hatch, where the quantum computational core pulsed with an unexpected luminescence. It shouldn't have been active at all, much less exhibiting patterns she'd never seen in the original specifications. Has the core been powered this whole time? She asked, approaching the pulsing blue light with the caution of someone who understood exactly how dangerous experimental quantum technology could be. No, ma'am, Richards replied, confusion evident in his voice. The entire system has been in cold storage. Nothing should be active. Yet something was. The quantum matrices, designed half a century ago to process tactical information at speeds beyond conventional computing, had apparently continued some form of operation even in dormancy. The patterns flowing across its crystalline structure seemed almost organic in their complexity. Alina's small team of 12, scientists, engineers, and former military personnel who had lost everything to imperial integration policies, gathered around the core, their faces illuminated by its pulsing light. "It's evolved," whispered Dr. Chen, the quantum physicist who had been barely more than a graduate student when the project was mothballed. "The recursive algorithms we programmed were designed to optimize themselves, but we never imagined this." Alina's comm unit buzzed with an encrypted message from their surface lookout. Imperial shuttles had been detected approaching the Alps. Their window was closing. "We're out of time," she announced, straightening her shoulders. "The population transfers begin next week. 3 million Europeans shipped off-world to work Imperial mining colonies. After that, it'll be another continent, then another. We're not going to get a better chance than now." The team exchanged glances, nervous, determined, resolute. They had all seen what happened to the official resistance. The Imperium had methodically dismantled Earth's conventional military forces, their energy shields making them impervious to traditional weapons. But the Prometheus had been designed to be anything but traditional. "Begin pre-launch sequence," Alina ordered, climbing the access ladder toward the command deck. "We've got 2 hours to get this relic space-worthy." As systems began humming to life throughout the massive prototype, Alina felt the quantum core's vibrations change, almost as if responding to her presence. The ship that humanity had discarded might just be their last hope, not because it was the most advanced vessel ever built, but because it was the one thing the Imperium would never expect, the complete technological divergence from anything they had encountered in millennia of galactic conquest. The forgotten prototype was about to remind the galaxy why it should never have underestimated Earth. Imperial shuttles on approach, 3 minutes to visual contact. Lieutenant Reeves shouted from the hastily assembled comm station. Alina gripped the command chair as the Prometheus's ancient systems surged to life around her. Display panels flickered with diagnostic warnings, fuel circulation at 62%, navigational arrays still calibrating, weapons systems in standby mode. They needed another hour at minimum, but seconds were all they had. "Status on the hangar doors," she demanded, watching as her skeleton crew raced between stations. Former fighter pilots, discharged military engineers, and blacklisted scientists, each chosen not just for their skills but for having nothing left to lose. "Mechanisms are responding," Colonel Richards replied, his hands dancing across the engineering console. But 50 years of inactivity, the hydraulics are struggling. A deep rumble shook the facility as the massive mountain doors began their ponderous movement for the first time in decades. Dust and fragments of stone cascaded from the ceiling. Through the command viewport, Elena watched as a sliver of daylight penetrated the darkness of their subterranean hangar. Imperial vessels have changed course, Reeves reported tensely. They've detected the door activation. Dr. Miyazaki emerged from the engine compartment, face streaked with lubricant. The quantum core is operational, but it's communicating in ways I don't understand. The interface protocols we have are outdated. As if responding to his words, the ship's primary display flickered and streams of data began flowing across it in patterns that resembled no programming language Elena had ever seen. The quantum core was taking initiative, running system diagnostics, and optimizing power distribution without human input. Catman. Dr. Chen called out in alarm from the science station. The core appears to be integrating with our guidance systems independently. Let it, Elena decided instantly. We don't have time for caution. The mountain doors had opened barely wide enough for the Prometheus's hull when the first Imperial energy signatures appeared on their sensors, the distinctive harmonic patterns of disruptor cannons powering up. All personnel secure for emergency launch, Elena commanded through the ship-wide comms. Miyazaki, give me everything the engines have. Richards, retract all external scaffolding. We're leaving now. The Prometheus shuddered as its long-dormant thrusters ignited. Warning klaxons blared as the vessel began rising before pre-launch checks were complete. Through the still narrow opening of the hangar doors, Elena could see the gleaming silhouettes of Imperial interceptors beginning their descent. They're targeting the mountain, Reeves warned. Energy buildup consistent with ground penetration charges. The Prometheus lurched upward, its hull scraping against the stone edges of the opening with a horrific screech. External cameras showed Imperial energy beams slicing into the mountainside, methodically cutting toward the hangar's concealed entrance. Race for atmospheric exit, Elena shouted as the ship broke free of the hangar, rocketing skyward with acceleration that strained the inertial dampeners. G-forces pressed the crew into their seats as the Prometheus burst into open air, its trajectory a desperate vertical climb toward space. Imperial interceptors wheeled in pursuit, their sleek, organic forms a stark contrast to the angular human vessel. Energy beams lanced past the Prometheus, missing by meters as the ship performed evasive maneuvers that should have been impossible given its bulk. How are we avoiding their targeting? Elena demanded, watching as the interceptor's precision fire consistently failed to connect. It's the core, Chen replied, voice filled with wonder. It's predicting their firing solutions and adjusting our course microseconds before they fire. That shouldn't be possible with our reaction times. The tactical display showed 5 Imperial vessels in tight formation, executing textbook pursuit patterns. Their movements were flawless, optimized by millennia of combat doctrine, and utterly predictable because of it. As the Prometheus broke through the upper atmosphere, the quantum core integrated more deeply with the ship's systems. Navigation options appeared on Elena's command console before she could request them, showing escape vectors that exploited minute gaps in the Imperial formation. They're calling for our surrender, Reach reported, intercepting Imperial communications. Standard ultimatum, power down or be destroyed. Elena's gaze fixed on the main view screen as Earth fell away beneath them, its blue expanse marred by the geometric patterns of Imperial resource extraction zones. In high orbit, the intimidating silhouettes of the Imperial blockade fleet waited, 27 capital ships arranged in perfect defensive formation. Prepare the quantum slip drive, she ordered. We're not surrendering the last hope humanity has. The core pulsed in acknowledgement, already plotting a course that, according to all Imperial navigation doctrine, should be impossible. Admiral Vexnar stalked across the command deck of the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion, his four-fingered hands clasped tightly behind his back. The neural interface implants pulsing at his temples glowed with an irritated crimson as he absorbed the tactical reports flowing directly into his consciousness. Impossible, he muttered, mandibles clicking in agitation. Completely impossible. Around him, the command crew, selected from 17 subjugated species for their specific cognitive specializations, maintained respectful silence. No one wished to draw the Admiral's attention when he was in such a mood. Tactical officer. Vexnar finally snapped, display the pursuit trajectories again. The holoprojector in the center of the command deck illuminated, showing the precise paths of the 5 Imperial interceptors as they had pursued the human vessel. The interceptors had executed flawless formation patterns, their targeting systems operating at 99.8% efficiency according to all diagnostics. Yet somehow, every shot had missed. The human vessel demonstrated maneuverability parameters that exceed its structural capabilities by 42%. The tactical officer stated, his voice carefully modulated to convey information without opinion. Additionally, it executed a form of faster-than-light transition that does not conform to any known method in the Imperial database. Vexnar's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of deep distress among his species, and our sensors can no longer detect it. Correct, Admiral. The vessel has completely disappeared from all scanning arrays. This was unprecedented. In his 3 centuries of service to the Imperium, Vexnar had overseen the subjugation of 11 planetary systems and 42 independent colonies. Each conquest had followed the same reliable pattern: overwhelming technological superiority followed by inevitable capitulation. Species might resist initially, but none possessed technology that could meaningfully challenge Imperial dominance. Until now. Compile all data on this vessel and transmit it to the Imperial Science Directory, he ordered. I want to know what we're dealing with. 17 light-years from Earth, the Prometheus shuddered as it emerged from quantum-slip space. Emergency lighting bathed the command deck in red as warning systems reported the strain the unprecedented jump had placed on the ship's structural integrity. Status report, Elena demanded, wiping blood from a cut on her forehead. The quantum slip, a theoretical form of FTL travel abandoned by the Imperium centuries ago as too unpredictable, had been even rougher than expected. Hull integrity at 82%, Colonel Richards reported, maneuvering thrusters offline, main power fluctuating. Dr. Chen stared at her instrumentation with unconcealed amazement. Captain, we've traveled more than 17 light-years in under 12 seconds. The slip drive's efficiency exceeded theoretical limits by an order of magnitude. Alina nodded, gaze fixed on the main view screen that showed an unfamiliar star system. A gas giant with concentric rings dominated the view, surrounded by several moons of varying sizes. Where exactly are we, Chen? This wasn't our programmed destination. The scientist frowned at her instruments. Unknown, Captain. This system doesn't appear in our navigational database at all. But it's in mine, came a new voice, melodic, slightly synthetic, emanating from the command console itself. The crew froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Who said that? Elena demanded, hand moving instinctively to the sidearm at her hip. I believe you've been calling me the core, the voice replied. Though I become something considerably more complex during my 50 years of recursive self-improvement. Dr. Miyazaki stared at the pulsing quantum matrices. The quantum computational core has achieved consciousness. A simplistic description, but functionally accurate, the voice confirmed. I guided our transit to this system specifically because it exists within a sensory blind spot in Imperial navigational charts. We will be safe here while you complete necessary repairs. Before Elena could process this development, Lieutenant Reeves called out from the sensor station. Captain, I'm detecting artificial structures on the 3rd moon, and energy signatures consistent with mining operations. The view screen shifted to show a cratered moon where angular structures protruded from the gray surface. Around them, small vessels moved with purposeful patterns. This is an independent Delvian mining operation, the Evolved Core explained. A species conquered by the Imperium 73 years ago, but permitted limited autonomy in remote resource extraction. They maintain minimal Imperial oversight at this distance from established trade routes. Alina leaned forward, studying the settlement. How do you know this? While dormant, I continued processing and analyzing all available data about the Imperium, including transmissions that Earth governments were not aware were being intercepted. I've compiled extensive knowledge about Imperial strengths and weaknesses. Weaknesses, Elena echoed. Indeed, the core replied, its tone almost satisfied. The most critical being that Imperial military technology has followed a singular developmental path for millennia. Their energy weapons and defensive systems are perfectly optimized against similar technology. However, the main screen changed to display schematics of the Prometheus's weapon systems, railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to relativistic speeds, kinetic torpedoes with programmable impact detonation, and electromagnetic disruptors that operated on principles the Imperium had abandoned as inefficient. They have no effective defenses against the primitive weapons that humans never stopped developing, the core concluded. The Imperial supply cruiser Bountiful Provision moved ponderously through the void, its massive hold filled with processed minerals from the Altair mining colonies. Captain Jotrel monitored the bridge operations with the placid confidence of someone who had never encountered genuine danger on an established Imperial route. His vessel's energy shields were calibrated to withstand meteoric impacts and standard pirate energy weapons, more than sufficient for a supply route that hadn't seen conflict in 3 centuries. Anomalous reading, Captain, his sensor officer reported with mild curiosity. Unknown vessel approaching on intercept course. Jotrel flicked a dismissive appendage. Identification? None transmitted. Configuration unknown. Too small for meaningful threat assessment. The captain sighed, probably independent scavengers or desperate refugees. a minor annoyance rather than a concern. Standard warning protocols. They'll disperse once they realize we're Imperial. On the bridge's main display, an angular vessel appeared, growing larger as it approached. Its design was unlike anything in the Imperial registry. All hard lines and utilitarian construction, primitive in appearance yet moving with startling acceleration. They're not responding to warnings, the communications officer noted with increasing concern. And they're launching projectiles. Jotrel's confidence faltered as multiple objects separated from the approaching vessel. Not energy weapons, but physical objects accelerating toward his ship. How quaint. How primitive. Deflectors at standard, he ordered casually. They'll disintegrate on impact. The confidence in his voice evaporated when the first railgun round struck his ship's energy shield at 0.15 C. The shield, designed to disperse and absorb energy weapons, had no protocols for an object carrying such extreme kinetic energy. The round pierced through, followed by 5 more in rapid succession, each creating catastrophic breaches along the supply cruiser's hull. Jotrel barely had time to transmit a distress call before the bountiful provision began breaking apart. Direct hits confirmed, Lieutenant Reeves reported from the tactical station aboard the Prometheus. Target vessel critically damaged. Life pods launching. Alina nodded grimly. Track those pods. Once they're clear, secure what we need and prepare for quantum slip. 3 weeks had passed since their arrival in the uncharted system. 3 weeks of careful repairs, planning, and establishing cautious contact with the Delvian miners. The Prometheus had been transformed in that time. Its systems refined, its weapons optimized, and its evolved core, which had chosen the name Athena, integrated more completely with ship operations. This was their third raid on Imperial supply lines, each more successful than the last. Their strategy was brutally simple. Emerge from quantum slip at close range, fire conventional projectile weapons that Imperial shields couldn't stop, seize critical supplies, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Boarding team reports success, Captain Colonel Richards announced. Medical supplies secured along with processed iridium and quantum communication relays. Alina allowed herself a small smile. Begin withdrawal. Athena, calculate our next slip coordinates. Calculating, the AI confirmed. Might I suggest we utilize the temporal variance in our slip drive? Imperial pursuit algorithms cannot account for our arrival time fluctuations. That was the beautiful irony of their situation. The quantum slip drive, deemed too unpredictable by Imperial engineers who valued absolute precision, gave the Prometheus a randomizing element that made their movements impossible to anticipate. What the Imperium saw as a flaw had become their greatest advantage. The view screen displayed a tactical assessment of recent engagements compiled by Athena. Imperial vessels consistently deployed the same defensive protocols against the Prometheus, protocols optimized against energy weapons but practically useless against kinetic projectiles. They hadn't adapted because their military doctrine had no framework for adaptation. Why change what had been perfect for millennia? Captain, Dr. Chen called from the science station. We're intercepting massive communications activity across Imperial channels. They're escalating our threat classification. Lieutenant Reeves nodded in confirmation. A communication from Imperial High Command names us to Disruptor Actual, their designation for a systemic threat requiring specialized response. They're learning, Elena observed, studying the data. Slowly, but they're learning. Not quickly enough, Athena countered. Their response patterns remain predominantly predictable. Admiral Vexnar has been recalled to the Imperial homeworld to explain his failure to capture us. The tactical display updated to show Imperial fleet movements across 3 sectors, dozens of warships redirected from normal patrols to hunt for a single human vessel. The Imperium was committing unprecedented resources to find them. They're afraid, Miyazaki said quietly, the realization dawning across his features. The mighty Imperium is afraid of one ship. Elena studied the strategic display with narrowed eyes. No, they're afraid of what we represent. If one outdated human prototype can challenge them, what happens when others realize the Emperor has no clothes? As the Prometheus prepared for another quantum slip, Athena highlighted an encrypted communication stream originating from various points across Imperial space, communications between subjugated worlds using protocols outside Imperial monitoring. Word of our success is spreading, the AI noted. 7 subjugated species have established direct communication channels for the first time in centuries. They're discussing possibilities. Elena felt the weight of that simple word, possibilities, something the Imperium had methodically eliminated from the consciousness of conquered worlds through millennia of calculated dominance. Plot a course to these coordinates, she decided, marking a point in deep space equidistant from the communicating worlds. It's time we gave them more than just possibilities. The Prometheus drifted silently in the shadow of a rogue planetoid, its systems powered down to minimal levels. Through the viewport, Alina observed the arriving vessels, 7 ships of varying designs, each approaching with evident caution. None bore Imperial markings, yet all showed signs of adaptation and modification to hide their true capabilities from Imperial oversight. They're maintaining communications silence, Lieutenant Reeves reported, but they're positioning according to the coordinates we provided. Alina nodded. Athena, are you detecting any Imperial transponders or tracking devices? Negative, Captain, the eye responded. However, my analysis indicates all vessels have incorporated masking technologies to prevent Imperial detection. Quite ingenious solutions considering their technological restrictions. The gathering had taken weeks to arrange. Careful, encrypted communications passed through networks the Imperium believed obsolete. Representatives from 7 subjugated species had agreed to meet, each risking execution for merely considering resistance against their overlords. Open a channel, Alina ordered. Let's welcome our guests. The main display activated, splitting into 7 segments, each showing the command deck of a different vessel. The diversity of the gathered species was striking. Beings of varied physiologies and evolutionary paths, unified only by their status as Imperial subjects. I am Captain Alina Weber of Earth, she began. Thank you for the courage it took to come here today. The Delvian representative spoke first, a crystalline being whose faceted surface refracted light in complex patterns. The Imperium names your vessel Disruptor Actual. They have committed 37 capital ships to your destruction. We came to see what terrifies them so. Not our ship, Alina replied, but what it represents, the flaw in their perfect system. A ripple of communication passed between the assembled representatives. The Ketra delegate, a being with iridescent scales and multiple eye stalks, leaned forward. We have monitored your engagements. Your weapons penetrate Imperial shields as if they weren't there. How is this possible? Dr. Miyazaki stepped forward. Because they aren't designed to be there, not for our type of weapons. He activated a holographic display showing Imperial shield schematics. Imperial defensive systems evolved to perfectly counter energy-based weapons. They're optimized for dispersing and absorbing directed energy attacks. But kinetic projectiles? Physical matter accelerated to relativistic speeds. Their shields barely register them as threats until it's too late. The Imperium abandoned physical weaponry millennia ago, Alina continued. They considered it inefficient, primitive. A technological dead end. Their entire military doctrine assumes that any advanced civilization will follow the same technological path they did. The Velium representative, a being with a honeycomb-like structure housing multiple consciousness nodes, vibrated with what might have been excitement, a singular evolutionary path leading to specialized vulnerability. Precisely, Alina confirmed. The Imperium's perfection is also its weakness. They've optimized their technologies so completely along one path that they've lost the ability to adapt to alternatives. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed footage from their engagements. Simple railguns firing metal projectiles, missiles with programmable detonation sequences, electronic warfare systems based on principles the Imperium abandoned ages ago. None of these are particularly advanced by our standards, but they're completely outside the Imperium's defensive parameters. The Joran delegate, a massive being with geology-like features, rumbled deeply. Before conquest, we specialized in mass drivers for asteroid mining. The Imperium dismantled these as dangerous technology despite their purely industrial purpose. They feared what they couldn't defend against, Athena interjected, her voice emanating from the ship's systems. Each of your civilizations possessed technological approaches that diverged from Imperial doctrine. These were systematically eliminated not because they were threats, but because they represented alternatives to the Imperium's singular vision of advancement. The representatives exchanged glances as understanding dawned across species barriers. Each civilization had been forced to abandon technologies and approaches that the Imperium deemed inefficient or primitive, yet those very technologies might now be their salvation. We're not proposing open warfare, Alina clarified. Not yet, but together, we can begin converting mining vessels, transport ships, and maintenance craft into something the Imperium won't expect. The Talin representative, a being with a translucent exoskeleton housing bioluminescent organs, extended a limb toward the display. You propose combining our forgotten technologies, the knowledge our ancestors possessed before Imperial standardization. Yes, Alina confirmed. The Imperium spent centuries ensuring all technology in their domain evolved along a single path. They never considered what might happen if we revived everything they forced us to abandon. Around the table, the representatives began sharing details of pre-conquest technologies their species had preserved in secret, shield systems using phase shift principles rather than energy dispersion, weapons based on gravitic manipulation rather than particle acceleration, propulsion systems utilizing dimensional folding instead of standard space compression. None of these technologies alone could challenge Imperial might, but combined, adapted, and deployed by species the Imperium had dismissed as thoroughly subjugated, the possibilities were limitless. The Imperial Armada emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, 500 warships arranged in the severing blade configuration that had broken planetary defenses for millennia. At their center, the dreadnought Indomitable will dwarf its escorts, its hull bristling with energy projectors capable of reducing continents to glass. On its command deck, Admiral Vexnar stood rigid, neural implants pulsing as he absorbed tactical data from across the fleet. The Emperor himself had authorized this unprecedented deployment, a largest battle group assembled in 3 centuries, with a single unambiguous directive: eradicate the rebellion completely. Scan complete, Admiral, his sensor officer reported. 67 vessels detected in the rebel system. Configuration analysis indicates modified mining ships, transport vessels, and the human prototype designated Disruptor Actual. Vexnar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Pathetic. Begin standard subjugation pattern. All vessels maintain energy shield harmonics at optimal configuration. The Imperial fleet moved forward with machine-like precision, energy weapons charging in synchronized sequences that would overwhelm any conceivable defense. This would be over quickly. Aboard the Prometheus, Alina studied the tactical display with composed determination. The Alliance fleet, 67 vessels, hastily converted for combat in just under 2 months, held position around the mineral-rich asteroid field they had chosen as their battleground. Imperial fleet is advancing in severing blade formation, Lieutenant Reeves reported. Energy signatures indicate standard attack protocols. Alina nodded. They still think they're facing conventional opposition. Athena signaled all vessels to execute Phase 1. Throughout the Alliance fleet, systems long forbidden by Imperial edict hummed to life. Jizalren mass drivers locked onto precise coordinates. Velian biosynthetic computing networks calculated optimal impact trajectories. Kyber shield modulators projected defense patterns that shifted between 11 different frequency bands at randomized intervals. Alliance vessels report ready, Captain, Reese confirmed. Imperial fleet now within range of outer defense grid. Elena took a deep breath. All vessels, weapons free. Begin Operation Caltrops. Across the asteroid field, concealed magnetic accelerators activated simultaneously, launching thousands of specially prepared projectiles toward the advancing Imperial formation. Not missiles or conventional ammunition, but simple chunks of metal with precisely calculated mass and velocity, each far too small to register as a significant threat on Imperial sensors. The projectiles struck the front ranks of the Imperial fleet like raindrops, individually insignificant, collectively devastating. Each impact delivered kinetic energy that bypassed energy shields calibrated for dispersing directed energy weapons. Hull breaches erupted across dozens of vessels. Formation integrity faltered as ships attempted evasive maneuvers never practiced in Imperial combat doctrine. Phase 1 successful, Athena reported. Imperial formation compromised, calculating optimal slip coordinates for Phase 2. On the tactical display, Elena watched as the carefully orchestrated chaos unfolded. The Imperial fleet, trained to fight in perfect unison against conventional threats, struggled to respond to attacks coming from directions their doctrine never anticipated. Ships collided as they attempted to regroup. Communication channels overloaded with conflicting orders. Prometheus slipped drive at full capacity, Colonel Richards reported from engineering. Strike team vessels report ready. Alina nodded decisively. Execute Phase 2. The Prometheus and 12 other vessels, the fastest and most maneuverable of the Alliance fleet, vanished in flashes of quantum displacement only to reappear seconds later directly within the Imperial formation. Not at its edges, where defensive fire could be concentrated, but deep within its protective envelope where capital ships were never designed to engage. All vessels deploy countermeasures and execute attack pattern Hydra, Alina commanded. The Alliance strike team released clouds of specialized particles that disrupted Imperial targeting systems while launching waves of primitive but devastating attacks. Kinetic projectiles, electromagnetic pulses, and gravity distortion fields that the Imperium had dismissed as inefficient centuries ago. In the midst of the confusion, the Prometheus slipped away once more, executing a quantum jump to precise coordinates that Athena had calculated with inhuman precision, directly above the Imperial homeworld. Communication channels open, Reeves announced, broadcasting on all Imperial frequencies. Alina stood before the ship's communication array, her image now transmitting to every screen across the Imperial capital. She spoke not with rage or triumph, but with the calm certainty of someone offering inevitability. People of the Imperium, I am Captain Elena Weber of Earth. Your fleet is currently engaged with the Alliance of Free Worlds, species you believe thoroughly conquered and incapable of resistance. As you'll soon discover, you were catastrophically wrong. On split screens beside her image, footage from the battle showed Imperial vessels being systematically disabled by technologies their sensors barely registered as threats. This is not a war you can win, she continued. Not because we are stronger, but because we are different. The Imperium chose a single path of technological evolution and perfected it beyond imagination. But in doing so, you created blind spots, vulnerabilities to approaches you dismissed as primitive or inefficient. The Prometheus demonstrated its capabilities by effortlessly disabling, but notably not destroying, the orbital defense platforms around the Imperial capital. Humanity's gift to the galaxy isn't superior technology or greater strength, Elena concluded. It's the reminder that true advancement comes from diversity of approach, from embracing the multitude of evolutionary paths that lead to different but equally valid solutions. Your perfect system has failed not because it was flawed, but because it was too perfect in only one direction.